Hello and welcome to episode 20 of the Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast. My name is Tom Luongo. It is Sunday, July 9th, 2017. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about this week. I mean, I say that almost every time, but we have a lot to talk about. And it's not just in the G20 and geopolitics, but we have a big thing to talk about in the gold, silver, and Bitcoin market. So let's get right to it because, well, I don't want to do this all day. All right, let's do it. All right, so Trump in Poland, Trump at the G20, Trump and Putin, Trump crumbles his opposition. These are all of the things that you have to keep in mind here. This week is all about Trump. It just is. So let's start with Friday at the 3C Summit in Poland, where I've got an article up on Russia Insider, which was written before the meeting between he and Putin. It was written or Thursday. It was written Friday morning, right as Trump and Putin were beginning to meet, and it didn't get published until the next day. And so it feels a little tone deaf because I really upbraid Trump for his rhetoric in Poland and wondering whether or not he was going to be able to salvage anything with Putin the next day with what amounts to pretty aggressive rhetoric. And I'm being kind. I didn't really like the speech in Poland. It was wildly praised on the right. It was and by his base and by Newt Gingrich calling it the best speech that anybody's given since, I think, the Cuban Missile Crisis or something. It was just completely over the top. It was a good speech from a couple of perspectives. His willingness to talk about, do we have the will in Western civilization to defend it to our core, is very important. And I know that probably resonated with Putin as well. And that part of the speech reminds me of Putin's address to the UN 2 days before the Russians moved into Syria, which I think is absolutely the most important geopolitical speech of the decade. Far more important than anything else anybody else has said. There is not a speech that lays out the case for everything that is wrong and everything that needs to be changed than Putin's speech to the UN on September 28, 2015. And if you have not watched it, stop listening to me, go look it up on YouTube, and go listen to it, because it is absolutely the most important speech of the decade, possibly the century. It notates the turn and the fundamental change in the geopolitical landscape. It's the day that Russia stood up and said, okay, that's enough. That's absolutely enough. We've had it. Everybody. The UN is at fault. We are at fault. The United States is at fault. Everybody's at fault. The leaders of the Muslim world who have not put their foot down against Islamic terrorism, far more important. But I digress. Where Trump's speech went off the rails in Poland was in his stoking Polish animosity towards Russia. This is unacceptable. I mean, now Putin's the ultimate pragmatist, and he understands that some of that is politics and yada yada yada. But that's not what's important. What's important is that Poland needed to be told, yes, you have every right to love your national sovereignty and to stand up to the EU trying to destroy your value system and your community and your culture and Polish history, good and bad. But Russia's not to blame for your current problems. And if you want to move forward as an independent actor, or as a member of the Visegrad Four, independently of the EU, we'll be your friend, but so will Russia. And he could have struck the same kind of balanced tone that he did with the Saudis and the Arab world when he was in Riyadh. And he didn't. It was a missed opportunity. Not unforgivable, obviously, because what happens at the G20 the next day? The next day, He and Putin sit down. They have their meeting. It's supposed to go 30 minutes. It goes 2 hours and 20 minutes. And they even come out with a peace agreement for southwestern Syria. Most importantly, on the Israeli-Jordan border, which is the most important part of the U.S.'s operations in Syria. Everything else is about pressuring Iran to give up certain aspirations that we feel they shouldn't have. Of course, if we want Iran to give up their nuclear aspirations, same thing with North Korea, then maybe we should stop bullying them and actually sit down and talk to them and not at them. Which is all Putin has ever asked anybody to do. Which is what Putin does. He goes on and he talks to everybody. Netanyahu, the Saudis, Iran, the United States, when they let him, Merkel, you name it. He's talking to everybody. He's making deals with everyone. Erdogan. He's using some of them as proxies. Certainly at this point, he's using Erdogan as a proxy in a number of different negotiations. Like he's not stepping in directly into the spat between the Arab countries and Qatar, for example. He's letting Erdogan do the dirty work there. And that's actually quite smart on his part. But so there's Trump and Putin at the G20. They come out with a new ceasefire and outline for building a de-escalation zone, which everybody involved, the United States, Jordan, Russia, and Israel, and Syria, will all be guarantors of. This is very important. We'll see how long it lasts. Putin's giving Trump every opportunity to show him that policy has changed and that he is now wrong. And what he told Oliver Stone during the interviews that they did. That, presidents change, but the policy doesn't because the bureaucracy is too strong. Well, here's Trump's opportunity to show Putin and the world that he's beginning to get control of the bureaucracy in the United States. He's beginning to wag the tail of the deep state, as opposed to the tail wagging the dog of the president. We'll see. I'm not convinced that this is the case. I'm just telling you what I see. But this is a very good start. In every way, this is a good start. It's what I always hoped would happen. But until these things do happen, I'm going to, reserve the right to remain skeptical. I'm going to reserve the right to not trust Donald Trump. I think that's the right way of going about things. Fundamentally, don't trust anybody who wields power. And anybody who wants to wield power. Right? Who's the best candidate for the United States? The guy who doesn't want to be president. Yeah. So, that meeting went very, very well. Lavrov and Tillerson, the two foreign ministers, secretaries of state, whatever you want to call them, top diplomats, obviously get along well. They obviously have a lot of common ground and can work out a number of things. The details of which they can work out, and that's what both Putin and Trump are good at. They're very good at delegating. Putin's got a great staff underneath him. Shoigu, his defense minister, is not a hothead, a very pragmatic man, just like Putin. And I'm sure that Putin was extremely happy to meet a pragmatic president, not one driven by ideology, not one driven by external goals or external, even in some ways, external images of himself. For all of Trump's supposed narcissism, at the end of the day, he looked at the situation with Putin and realized they both did. Okay, rhetoric is one thing. Actions matter. So let's get down to brass tacks and let's show the world that we can act together on things that everybody's worried about. Okay, so you think we hacked your election. This is Putin. Fine. Let us work on a framework for ensuring that never happens again. Even though we adamantly deny being involved in any way at the state level. Fair enough. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether they did or they didn't at this point. Let's put the cards on the table. Everybody knows that the United States is involved in electioneering all around the world. This is Putin's way of saying, hey, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. Put your money where your mouth is. Are you agreement capable? All of these things are very, very important. All right. And when you look at it from that perspective, Trump and Putin together, Trump just turned around and secured the border of the Golan Heights in the midst of the Syrian civil war. The most rabid neocon in the White House, in the Senate, argue it's John McCain, argue it's Lindsey Graham, can't argue with this. Just secured the border of the Golan Heights in 2 hours and 25 minutes. You notice how John McCain hasn't said anything. Because he knows that he's going to be fighting a losing war now. Trump is going to get a lot of political capital from this. He gets political capital from the Poland speech. He gets a lot of political capital from cutting a deal, a tentative deal, a good first step deal with Putin, de-escalating the world. It'll give them a basis for moving forward to discuss how to deal with North Korea and Iran. And Putin's going to tell Trump exactly what I just said. Stop talking at them. Start talking to them. If you want to get to the world you want, you have to deal honestly with the world you've got. I say it all the time. This ain't the world I want. It's the world I got. How am I going to take practical steps and pragmatic steps to get from where I am to where I want to go? And Putin is absolutely the ultimate pragmatist when it comes to that. He's not driven by ideology. He doesn't have the luxury to be driven by ideology. It's going to be hard for the Democrats. It's going to be hard for the rhinos to argue that Trump just had his best week in office. It's pretty impressive. All right. Let's get on to the charts and let's get you out of here. Because as we ended Q2, right, the end of June, we ended Q2, the dollar was under tremendous pressure. The euro was spiking. Gold and silver were tentatively hanging on to their, doggedly hanging on to their current trading ranges and all of that. And then Q3 opens. Reality sets in that deflation is still here. The central banks told us that they're not really going to fight it. They're going to stop fighting it in many ways. The ECB is now, apparently, I just saw something on Zero Hedge, there's, practically fistfights breaking out amongst the governors of the ECB about what to do about the policy changes that are coming up. The Fed is serious about raising interest rates so that they don't look like they're blowing an asset bubble in stocks. Guess what? Has nothing to do with them, ultimately. Well, it does in the long run. It doesn't in the short run. In the long run, yeah, they blew an asset bubble in stocks. But what they really blew an asset bubble in was U.S. dollar-denominated debt. That's the bubble. That's what's going to drive the dollar through the roof. And that's what gold and silver are telling you this week. They're not acting like safe havens. They're acting on liquidity concerns. And right now, while dollar markets are beginning to tighten, so are euro markets. And when both currencies are trying to get bid, because we see that because stocks have been struggling to make new highs. Bonds are getting sold. Gold is getting sold. Silver is getting sold. Oil is getting sold. People are moving to cash. If there's euro liquidity concerns, it's because, maybe there's more banks that are going to fail and people need cash. Okay? We're going to get a bottom here in the dollar. And we may even be getting this. This may be the beginnings of the final washout in gold and silver that I've been talking about for a year and a half now. not here on this podcast, but on previous iterations of this podcast when it was done under the rubric of my former newsletter at Newsmax. Every episode of Gold, Goats, and Guns podcast has talked about when is the final bottom going to come in gold. Well, gold's not quite telling us yet, but we did get this massive breakdown here on a weekly closing basis below that low right there at 1214. We closed last week at 1208 or 1212, depending on whose data service you use. It's below 1214. That's all that really matters. We now have higher high, lower low. Right, because this just barely beat this last high, so this is a widening pattern. That's never good, never good. And now we're looking at 1195, and then after that we're looking at 1140, 1125 down in here. Okay, all bad. Because when you look at gold, and it's showing you this. Now, I'm not saying that we're not going to get a bit of a bounce to the upside this week. Generally speaking, especially during tight dollar liquidity issues, or if there's any kind of worry about delivery on the COMEX, because this is July, so it's an odd month, so they are delivering gold this month. They tend to try and bomb gold during the 7-day period when people can actually stand for delivery in order to force them to not stand for as much delivery or push out weak-handed longs. So, not surprised by this. But then what's silver's problem? If that's the case. Because let's not kid ourselves here. This is a massive breakdown. I just showed you the weekly chart of gold, and that this now violates the June and May, the Q2 low. Now let's look at silver. This is a classic continuation pattern of a brutal bear market. There's no other way to describe this chart. We get a 5-year or 4-year downtrend. We get a 2-bar quarterly reversal here. Everything looks great. We're moving higher. We get this ugly candle here where we get a spike high that challenges this resistance level here, and then look at where we close. Terrible. Brutal for Q3. This is post Brexit, where we get this Brexit high here, and then we still collapse back. This is deflation. Because silver is so much more of an industrial metal, it's telling you that there's industrial concerns on its supply. There's not as much, there's no demand, there's no industrial demand for silver. There's only monetary demand, and that's not enough when we haven't lost faith in our central banks yet. And then we get this brutal fourth quarter sell-off when the dollar goes on its run after Trump gets elected. There's your reversal bar. We get 2 bars after that, playing within this range. Like, oh, well, that's not too bad. We could be setting up for, a trade here, right? No, 4 days. It took 4 days for this to break, for this support line to break down. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even hard. It's terrible. Silver is going to challenge the 2015 low. It might even go through it because oil's going back into the 30s. Okay? Every market all the other major strategic markets are offside. The euro's offside to the upside. Oil was offside to the upside to end Q2. They moved all this stuff around. The dollar was offside to the downside. We have deflation and trillions of dollars of dollar-denominated debt that needs to be serviced. And you can only push a beach ball down so far. Then eventually it has to snap up. Well, if you push the dollar down too far, then when it starts to rise, everything that correlates to the downside, to the opposite side of the pair trade, is going to get crushed. And that's what's happening in oil. That's what's happening in silver. We're going to see it happen in probably natural gas as well. If I looked at natural gas chart, I'll probably see the same thing. Certainly starting to see the same thing in copper. Okay? Gold and silver were telling us this is what was going to happen for the last 3 or 4 months. And even the dollar might not even bottom here yet. It might still take another couple of weeks for the dollar index to truly bottom, because there may be a panic, even more panic buying in the euro if the bank fails. All that money will eventually roll out to the United States, but you're going to have a collapse in gold and silver first. Okay, And that final collapse is coming. And for everybody who's listens to me and knows that, and wants gold and silver to go higher, and knows that it's got to go higher, blah, 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 and you're getting tired of it. This is the time when the real money is made. It is waiting this out with cash on the sidelines, just waiting for the right moment to be able to deploy capital at the bottom and then walk away. 5 years later, cash out, with 20 baggers in your hip pocket. That's what's going to happen. But you're going to have to eat a lot of shit between now and then. So, $15.50 on silver, try $12. That's where we're going. If we don't go to $12, I'll be happy. But you should be prepared emotionally and mentally for $12 silver. Okay? And $1,100 gold, possibly much, much lower. Okay? The last thing to talk about is Bitcoin. Because on the opposite side of this trade is Bitcoin. Last week I had the same title up here, or the last time we did this on Tuesday. Bottom and breakout. We had a bottoming pattern sort of coming up here. Look at what happened last week. We got a little inside bar here, by the way. Always a nice indication of a potential reversal. All right, we didn't break either the previous high or the previous low from this week. We didn't break either the high nor the low of this bar in this bar. Therefore, that's an inside bar, and this is now your breakout point, effectively. Actually, it's not an inside bar. I beg your pardon. This is your breakout point. Really, your breakout point is here at around 2600, 2620 or so. And look at where we're trading on the first day of the week. This is a very high probability setup of going higher. There's about an 80-20 probability here that you're going to break 2636 in the next couple of days. And if you get that on a daily closing basis, you're going back to 3,000. And that will take Ethereum with it. That will take Steam with it. That will take Monero and all the rest of them. Ripple, all of them. Because once this correction is over, then we're going to start to see capital flight concerns start to take over, probably out of the Eurozone and possibly even Japan fly into the cryptocurrencies, where the main markets, the main financial markets and the Forex markets are going to dump gold and silver and oil. All right. Also, something else to watch out for, the CFTC just approved options trading on Bitcoins. That will not end well. That I'm not looking forward to. Yet another reason why I'm actually not buying Bitcoin at this point. I'm actually buying Ethereum and building a position in Steam on steemit.com. There's a number of reasons why I have issues with Bitcoin, but it's still the biggest one, and it's still the leader of the pack. So watching its movements, because it has the best infrastructure, effectively, is the one that you have to watch it to gauge what's happening in the rest of the industry. But look at what's happening in Litecoin. It's incredible what's happening in Litecoin. It's a classic case of when one complementary asset gets too expensive, the other one then, relative to the other one just explodes. That's what's going to happen in gold and silver. Silver is going to get crushed worse than gold will. The gold to silver ratio is going to explode to the upside. And that's when you want to buy silver. That's when you're going to want to buy companies like Endeavor Silver and Pan American and whatever. Anybody, and Coeur d'Alene, I don't care, Core Mining, whatever. Pick your Hecla, pick your favorite silver stock that'll be trading at 90 cents. And then think about $200 silver at the top of this market when that same stock will be trading at $400. That's what's coming. So, no reason to buy at $4 at this point. All right. So that's what I've got for this week, or at least for today. I'll try and get another one of these done in a couple of days, because we're going to want to watch to see what happens in Bitcoin. If we get a breakout in Bitcoin, I'll probably come back in. If we get a spike low on silver, if we get another dollar washout on silver this week, we'll probably call that the low. If it happens that dramatically, if it unfolds, this waterfall collapse unfolds over a couple more weeks or even a month, But then the spike bottom is going to be much lower. But if it happens like right now, well, then we might not see $12 silver. We might only see $13 silver. Well, I'm happy to be wrong about that. If you get like puking capitulation in silver, that's when you're going to finally mark your bottom. But we're not quite there yet. But we're starting to get that momentum, which also means that there's going to be some even more interesting headlines in the coming weeks. All right, you guys take care. We will talk soon. Be good. And keep your stick on the ice.